our big story here. Republicans in the House racing to unite behind a deal to keep funding the federal government as a potential shutdown looms. It's now less than a week away. So joining us now here is Republican Congressman from New York, Marc Molinaro. I know you're there in D.C. Thank you so much for joining us. And Marc, like, you've been working hard behind the scenes. You're pushing for an agreement here. So we'll just ask the loaded question first. Will you meet one?
I think so. You know, just when people think the House Republican majority doesn't or can't accomplish something, we do. It's how we adopted an energy policy to drive down energy costs and assert America's energy independence. It's how we got to a defense bill that ultimately provides for housing for servicemen, the largest pay raise in generations. It's how we clawed back unspent COVID dollars and really are trying to confront the administration on border security. There's no question that there are deeply held principles at battle here. But there's agreement in the House Republican Conference that we need to drive down federal spending and respect taxpayers while securing our border.
Certainly. And of course, you know, you're a freshman member here, and among two New York Republicans saying that you're really willing to potentially work with Democrats to fund the government, possibly using this so-called discharge petition to then force votes on a short-term spending bill. So would you do that? Do you think that would work?
Well, first, we have by default or design a Democratic Senate and a Republican House. Whatever we agree to needs to be bipartisan. And I think that the American people sent us here. And in my case, the families of upstate New York sent me here to deliver on our promise and commitment to them. So it's an option that's on the table. But the best and most appropriate approach for us is to come together on a conservative spending plan that respects taxpayers, confronts the trillions of dollars the Democrats, when they held the House and the Senate before, forced into the economy, drove up inflation, and focuses effectively on border security. That is our best option. And I've been working every day, even as a freshman, you know, engaged in the negotiation these last few days with members from across this country, trying to get to that point of agreement.
And tell me how you straddle this unique position that you're in New York's Hudson Valley. It's a district that leans Democratic, so you have to try to appeal to both moderate voters and Republicans, right? So how do you do that without the backlash from your own party?
Well, listen, be honest with the people you serve. No one owns this district. There are 750,000 residents who all expect me to try to do my best to represent them. And what I will tell you is that, you know, growing up in public service, I've seen what a government shutdown looks like. It impacts communities like mine. And you know, we've got small businesses, families, farmers struggling every day to pay the high cost of living, to get their kids to soccer practice, to pay their bills. They want their government to be responsible and respectful of them, but to function as well. And so, listen, we'll navigate those waters. But this is a critical moment for America, for the House. And we need to deliver on that promise to really bring into organization and shrink the size, scale, and scope of the federal government.
And it seems that at some point you're taking it straight to the source here. You've spent some time with Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz out of Florida, one of those far-right members opposing short-term spending measure. What is he saying? What are the other hard-line members saying to you when you talk to them?
Well, listen, they want a commitment that we're going to take on the full spending plan. And I get that. I understand. We've had individual appropriation bills that have been ready to be considered over the course of months. We've got to move this procedural motion, right, calling the rule to get these up on the floor to debate. But what we came to, and it's a proposal and idea that I put forward, was simply let's move as many as we can over the weekend as a package to show that we mean business, that we're committed to driving down spending and meeting the expectation that we're trying to mold this consensus around a very diverse Republican majority in the hopes that those steps will show good faith to each other and to the American people, produce the short-term spending that we need, a continuing resolution to then take on the next bills and take on the next bills. But again, I think we can get there. But I would say a government shutdown is in no one's best interest.
All right, let's talk about this new ABC News Washington Post poll, if we can. It shows that Donald Trump has nearly a 10-point lead in a potential 2024 rematch against President Joe Biden. That same poll also showing that among voters who say that Trump should be banned by the Constitution from serving again as president, 18% of them would still support him over Biden. And so when you read into that poll, when you look at it, What does that say about Republicans who potentially don't want Donald Trump to be the nominee, but will vote for him if he is because they want a Republican in office?
Well, listen, I also think that it has to do with what the American people feel, and that is that President Joe Biden has been living in a fog, trying to convince people what they know isn't true. They know that cost of living is too high. They know that there's a border crisis of their own making. They know that this government doesn't respect them. And listen, they want somebody who's going to take the message to them and really hold this government accountable. That's translating. And I will tell you, I feel it at home. Folks are tired of politics as usual. They don't want government functioning the way it always has. And they want us to confront this paralysis and this feeling that government just doesn't respect them. It's what I care about. I want to make sure the people I represent have a government that's responsible to them and respects them. And I think you're seeing that play out in this polling.
Certainly, Congressman Mark Molinaro, thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening. We really appreciate it.
Same here. Thank you.
I want to bring this big story now to our panel. So joining us today is ABC News contributor and SiriusXM radio host Mike Muse, ABC News political contributor and former Democratic senator from North Dakota, Heidi Heitkamp, and ABC News contributor and former Republican Virginia Congressman Barbara Comstock, and of course Jay O'Brien is in Washington. So Jay, let's start with you. What is your take there when you hear the congressman talking about what he thinks will happen if Democrats and Republicans are trying to work together or not? Do they need to launch this discharge petition?
Yeah, I was kind of shouting at my TV screen to say, how much time is there to really do a discharge petition? And Congresswoman Comstock can check me on this, but by the end of the week, to me, and I wasn't in Congress, I just cover Congress, so the congressman might have something else to say here, but a discharge petition by week's end when the government runs out of money is almost an impossibility, it would seem, from this vantage point. So the question then becomes, what can you do without forcing Kevin McCarthy's hand with a discharge petition? And one of the things that the congressman just said there is that the hardline Republicans, Matt Gaetz and others, are asking for a deal in which McCarthy would try to push these spending bills over the goal line and to get their support on other mechanisms to fund the government. But here's the thing. Over the weekend, there was a conference call of House Republicans, we know from our sources, and that is the plan McCarthy agreed to. And still, to this day, to this minute, we're still hearing from holdout votes like Gaetz, who have not committed to supporting a short-term funding measure, also called the CR, despite getting that concession from McCarthy. So the path forward here that the congressman laid out is still very much unclear. There's a lot of work Kevin McCarthy's got to do this week to get this across the goal line.
And Barbara, to you, why all this dysfunction among Republican House members, and have things changed since you left office there in 2019? I also, I'm excited for the day when we can stop asking about dysfunction,
Well, good luck with that. Well, I'm glad you at least showed one of the members who's actually really constructive and stayed here and is trying to solve problems. But the problem is the dysfunction caucus, people like Matt Gaetz, people like Marjorie Greene, who went home to work out and do a video and show herself in the gym. They aren't committed to getting anything done. I mean, Matt Gaetz wants to run for governor. People like Matt Rosendale's running for, Senate in Montana. You have these other guys who the hallucinating caucus. I think one of the members who's trying to negotiate called them. They're really hallucinating into running for a higher office, and so they keep moving the goalposts. They also are talking to Donald Trump, who wants things like, defund the investigations into me, and if you shut down the government, they're going to continue, the cases against him continue. Nothing stops the investigations into Donald Trump. And if you shut down the government, they think they want to stop the aid to Ukraine. Fortunately, President Biden, gave additional money, so that will continue. So the kind of demands that Trump is making on these members will not get through.
And Heidi, let's talk about this new ABC News poll. It's showing that Biden is trailing Trump by nearly 10 points in a potential head-to-head matchup. Should Democrats be concerned? You would think yes. And what about the White House in a reaction to this kind of poll?
I think when you see a poll like that, that really is not consistent with the rest of the polls. They're going to look at their internals. They're going to think, by that I mean their internal polls. They're going to think, look, this is just a blip in time. You know, gas prices have gone back up. We'll see how this thing sorts out. And then the Republicans, as Barbara has said, are handing them a gift, because every shutdown that I've been part of or that I've watched has been blamed on the Republicans, and rightfully so. And so, you know, when you look at dysfunction, nobody does well. We've got now a system in Washington where a very narrow minority are basically dictating policies that result in a lot of injury to a lot of people across the country. And so, you know, Biden's going to exploit that. But, you know, these numbers are not good, and no one should think that this is a slam dunk coming into 2024. And so obviously there needs to be some course correction, some messaging. But I mean, I like what the congressman said, that this is going to sound odd, which is don't try and tell people something that they're not feeling at home. Don't try and tell people, oh, everything is good, when they're not feeling that. And there needs to be an acknowledgement of why that is, and they need to respond to the anxiety that is out there among the American people about the economy. And I think once they do that and show where their plan is better than the other plan, I think it'll re-engage people to take a look at Joe Biden and say, look, given a choice between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, we can't afford Donald Trump.
Well, let's take that to you, Mike. I mean, all the finger pointing everybody wants to do, they can place blame anywhere they want. Americans are not happy.
They're not, Kana. I mean, this comes down to a binary choice. You know me, Kana, I don't like binary choices, but it comes down to whether or not Speaker Kevin McCarthy wants to maintain his gavel as Speaker, or if he wants to do the right thing on behalf of the American public and continue the norms and traditions of keeping our government running and functional and being responsible. Because it comes down to him versus Matt Gaetz and the 19 other ultra-conservatives who doesn't have any tactical reason for opposing moving forward, but the act of just opposing. Historically, we have seen Speaker Boehner and former Speaker Paul Ryan have to deal with outsiders in their party, but the fact that we're a split Congress like we've never seen before, the margins are just too slim, and that bloc knows that. And so they are making noise just for the purpose of making noise. And the reason why I say that, there's no constitution of ideology. Usually Republicans are for military spending. Usually they're pro-geopolitics. We see them opposing the Pentagon bill. We see them opposing the war on Ukraine spending. And so there is no clear ask. And so if Kevin McCarthy wants to save the normality of functioning of government, he's going to have to side with the Democrats. But in order to do that, that's going to trigger an automatic vote for his removal as Speaker of the House. So, Kana, it really comes down to that binary question. Does Kevin McCarthy want speakership, or he doesn't want functionality of government?
All right. Mike Muse, Heidi Heitkamp, Barbara Comstock, and Jay O'Brien. Our thanks to all of you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.